These people are Southerners. They still celebrate the values and exploits of their ancestors who fought for the Confederacy in the Civil War. Members of the Sons of Confederate Veterans trace their lineage to relatives who bore arms for the Confederate States of America. They have what they call camps around the South. The one in Memphis is named after General Nathan Bedford Forrest. He is also founder, awkwardly enough, of the Ku Klux Klan. This was a national week-long convention held in Memphis in 2002. I shot this footage after I returned from working in California for many years. I did nothing with this material back then, but after the mass shooting in Charleston, South Carolina, and the Confederate battle flag becoming a flashpoint in media, I thought my portrait of the organization might add to the conversation of historic Southern symbols.
Thank you. I want to welcome y'all to Memphis, Tennessee, my hometown. I appreciate y'all being here to defend the South and to honor our ancestors. And remember, when under attack from both the front and the rear, you charge both ways. Thank you.
May I present one more guest. This man was another native Southerner.
Welcome you to Memphis and the Western Theater. We trust that everyone will keep in remembrance in these days of reunion that we are all together compatriots in a just and righteous cause.
And that righteous cause was not the continuation of slavery, according to their own website, but the North's rejection of the right of succession and the right of self-governance.
Cotton fields of Brownsville, and from the mighty Mississippi and here in Memphis to the mountains of Morristown, all the Tennesseans unite in extending to you all this hearty welcome to here to the great volunteer state.
Come again, my true love, oh, why you been so long? Oh, never count your bubbles while I watch us in the spring. Dark, I have no trouble while I got this song to sing. All of you, Jesus.
My perspective, that it signifies a group of people who are fraternal brothers. It's a brotherhood of people who believe and who feel like that we are part of something that was taken from us.
My master set me free. I went to old Kentucky to see what I could see. I could not go no farther. I turned the master's door. I love him all the harder. I'll go away no more. Ring, ring, the banjo, I like that.
Always felt a strong affiliation with the Confederate flag, and a lot of people, I think, see that Confederate flag as a racist symbol, and unfortunately there have been some hate groups that have taken that flag over and sort of besmirched it. But I see the Confederate flag as example of the blood of my ancestors. I have a great-grandfather who fought at the Battle of Chancellorsville.
Well, my brother and I, we order stones 20, 30 at a time for the replace the UDC markers out here, so that they'll have a name instead of a number. And we've been doing it for a number of years, and we've got a number of years left to do. We're trying to get it all marked out to where it's somebody can come out and really find their forebear, and instead of just a number, they'll have his name and history, what history we can find on him. And that's what we do.
The Old Elmwood Cemetery in Memphis, where some Confederate dead are buried. A number of Forrest relatives are here. He, however, notably is not. The city of Memphis recently renamed its parks that formerly had commemorated the Civil War. It also may actually move the huge statue and burial site of Forrest and wife from what was formerly named Forrest Park.
I wrote this book called The Last Confederate Flag, and I did it because of the thousands of Southerners who went to fight the Civil War, and many of them died. I had 20 ancestors in the Civil War. Only 8 of them came home. When they got home, their places had been burned, their livestock murdered or run off, and so I am of this opinion. You have a right to your cultural heritage, I have a right to mine. I'm not going to argue with you over your cultural heritage because you have things that you're proud of. Please allow us to be proud of our cultural heritage.
Well, one of the principal objectives of the Museum of the Confederacy is to serve as an educational tool. This last year, for instance, we had almost 5,000 school kids through on tours to look at the museum, look at the White House, and actually have some hands-on experience with some of our reproductions.
Earlier this morning, I brought the greetings of the National Order of the Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War to the body of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. As part of my presentation, I told them a little bit about myself, that I was a member for a while of the 17th Virginia, a Confederate reenacting group, and that as part of that group, I got a tour of the 17th Virginia Museum in Alexandria, Virginia, and I got to hold the battle flag of the 17th Virginia in my hands. And I told them this morning that when I was holding that flag, I felt a lot of things. Duty, honor, and country are not just modern recruiting tools for our military. They meant the same back then as well. And when I was holding that flag, I didn't feel any hate. To me, it's not a flag of hate.
This battle flag was created by the Spar family in Weston, West Virginia in '61. And it was used by the Louisville Rangers, which was my Spar family unit, and was carried into the first land battle of the Civil War in Philippi in 1861.
There's a book by the name of Call to Glory. It was written about my wife's great-great-great-grandfather, who was a pre-Civil War Texas Ranger. During the war, he and his 2 brothers signed up with the Texas 28th Cavalry. They fought the entirety of the war, all the way through the final battle, which was fought in Palmetto Ranch, Texas. After the war, he went back up to Tyler, Texas, in northeastern Texas, and finished his life as a ranger. Basically outliving his whole family and managing to live through it all somehow.
And this is a book that I've written on my great-great uncle. His name was Captain John Brooks. He was aide-de-camp to General Adam Rankin Johnson, who was a Confederate brigadier general. And Adam Johnson served under John Hunt Morgan. When John Hunt Morgan went up on his famous Indiana and Ohio raid, Adam Rankin Johnson had his 2nd Brigade. Morgan's brother-in-law, Basil Duke, had the 1st Brigade. And so Captain John Brooks was Johnson's aide-de-camp.
Who's going to help us rebuild that home? Who's going to help us keep this statue in repair and protect these grounds? Ms. Brooks? I doubt it. Mr. Ford? I doubt it. It is up to each and every one of us on these grounds today to take it by the horns, to get around the flank, Forrest fashion, and take back the churches, take back the schools, take back our young people, who for the most part we have lost to a cold, calculated opponent that is only interested in self-promotion. What would Forrest do in today's world with the Catholic Church? It's no wonder our young people are turning away from the cloth and the Lord because they're not safe there. What would Forrest do with the state of today's schools? If it's going on in the churches, you can rest assured it's going on in the public schools. So if not you, then who? Who's going to right the wrongs? Who is going to let people know that Nathan Bedford Forrest did more after he laid down his weapons to bring this country back together, all races, colors, or creeds, than anyone during the Reconstruction process? Thank you, sir. So if not you, then who? Because our children today in the schools, if they don't follow the party line, and that line in a typical history test talks about certain members of the civil rights movement and what icons they are. Okay? Fact. Known members of the Communist Party. Fact. Extortionists. Fact. Plagiarist. Fact. Adulterous. And yet, if the answer isn't proper on the test paper, they are penalized. This is an icon? No. That is an icon. It did not matter a man's race, color, or creed. Forrest judged you as a man. And all our opponents out there are going, well, wait a minute. He was a slave dealer. Yes, he was. But he kept families together. And when he saw that he couldn't keep them together, he got out of the business. Right before the war. Let's fast forward to after the war. He provided more jobs for all races at higher rates of pay than Brownlow did with the Tennessee Reconstruction government, than Johnson and then Grant did with the federally funded programs, quote unquote. It was Forrest. Forrest in the forefront, just like Tishomingo Creek, just like Parker's Crossroads, just like on the flank at Shiloh, it was Forrest. So it's up to you, each and every one of you, to learn about the man.
My grandfather, Louis Napoleon Nelson, was a Confederate soldier. My parents divorced when I was 5 years old, and I grew up in my grandfather's house. In his house, He had pictures, newspaper clippings, and everything else that indicated that he was a Confederate soldier.
They gathered round the little group, each brave man knelt and cried.
Black men were involved for the same reason that the white Southerners were involved. Their homeland had been invaded. The Yankees came down, they raped the black women, the black missy girls, the slowly approaching young womanhood. Then they went and got drunk, but they still raped the white women. So everybody was pissed off.
Please take me to thy fond embrace, and take me home to thee. The angels round the throne of grace look down upon the brave, who fought and died on Shiloh's plain, now slumbering in their graves.
It's about honoring our ancestors and essentially following Christian values of honoring those who were before us.
Like that drummer boy who prayed before he died.
To me, it's something that you have, you can't about take it away from you, and I enjoy participating in these programs and honoring my ancestors.
Whether reenacting, reinterpreting, or even rewriting history, as their adversaries no doubt claim, Southerners take to it, and talking about it brought a huge crowd to this author event at the convention.
A people that doesn't know their history has amnesia. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Former Speaker of the House and real historian Newt Gingrich did a book signing for his Gettysburg, a novel of the Civil War.
Because, you know, there's an opportunity here maybe for us to get Forrest into one of these fights. I think that's a great in volume 2 and volume 3.
He and co-author William R. Forstchen wrote the book in what Gingrich called alternate history, the alternative being the South won the Battle of Gettysburg.
Go ahead until I finish. Yeah, no, thank you. We had a great time doing it. 2 questions about a person who I certainly think has to rank in the very short list of the best generals the Confederacy had. I mean, we could have a huge argument if we get 3 Virginians in here and get in a fight between Jackson and Forrest, but you'd have to say he was an astonishing genius at the art of war. Here are my 2 questions, and I don't know enough to give you an answer. The first is, was he in fact psychologically likely to ever be a scout for anybody else? He is a great commander in his own right. But is he likely to be as good being the subordinate to Lee in a scouting role, as opposed to deciding to just go off and kill Yankees, for which he had a substantial proficiency? The second question is, if you gave him the same mission that Lee had given Stuart, could he have gotten back any faster? Or in fact, would you now be talking about, gee, if only Stuart was still there? Because there is this problem of the Union Army having moved much faster than they were ready for. I mean, this is the first time in the war that you see them really underestimate the Army of the Potomac, and I think it's because the Army of the Potomac got better, and they were still thinking about the Army they had been out maneuvering 6 months earlier, but Hooker had improved it dramatically in training and in practice, and then Meade was just a much more decisive professional officer. I think if the principle of secession had been proven by force, then I don't know that California stays in the Union. I don't know that New England stays with the Midwest. I mean, you could have ended up with 5 countries or 6 countries where we now are one. I also say to you that once secession was proven as legitimacy, I'm not at all sure Texas stays in the Confederacy. I mean, given the Texas attitude even now, it's what's my opinion of Abraham Lincoln? I think he's remarkable. Yeah. No, I mean, think about it for a second. And you asked me, I'm giving my honest opinion. Here is a man who doesn't know much about fighting a war, who takes over 2/3 of a country, that finds itself in a huge fight with 1/3 of the country.
It wasn't a fight until they sent the troops in.
Well, right, that's right. But Lincoln is determined to send the troops in. And whether you like him or dislike him, and this is the same argument I'd give somebody who says to me,
What did Butler do to Maryland? He imprisoned the legislature.
Yeah, sure. No, that's exactly right. But no, you're arguing were they right or wrong. Yeah. I'm arguing, should you be impressed? These are people who were determined to win. And the level of determination he brought to it was totally unexpected. I mean,
Was that constitutional?
no, I don't think so. No, I mean that's part of but that's part of my point about Lincoln. This is a man who said, okay, I could be narrowly constitutional and we would not survive, or I could break as many, and he's pretty open about it. I mean, he says, I will break whatever I have to break to win.
And he did.
And he did. But you have to be impressed that he had the sheer brute willpower to do it. By his own lights, yeah. But, I mean, yes, by his own lights. But his lights were that keeping this one country was worth virtually anything. And I think that's where it started. And he said to you, I hate doing this. Forcibly, they meant freeing the slaves. And they didn't mean they were going to make them import Irishmen or, some other kind of thing. And it was in that sense, I think it really did have. Now, states' rights became the legal, legitimate barrier against this kind of oppression from the central government. And I think that there's a very strong argument that in fact, Lincoln changes the meaning of the Constitution. I mean, that clearly the Constitution that was a Confederate, the United States of America, really becomes a different country as a consequence of the war, which is part of why we study it so much. There are only two great events after the founding of the country. I mean, if you count the Founding Fathers as sort of the first great event, the other two great events are this war and the Second World War. I mean, those are the only great events where they just transcend everything. Everybody's touched by them. I actually think that history is better left to historians because I think the next cycle of politicians can then decide that they're going to tell you how to write the next phase. Again, I just said, I think it is legitimate to say parts of this, in fact, were about slavery. Having part of the role of slavery being explained is a part of it. But the battlefields should also be explained as battlefields. They should be explained in the context of the battlefield. And I'm very much against this generation's political correctness and then the next generation's political correctness. And I think that, in fact, that is in the long run phony history. Yes, sir.
And if Gingrich did not present an admittedly fictional enough interpretation of history, the Sons wrote out a non-fictional and polemical battlefield howitzer of their own. H.K. Edgerton, former president of the North Carolina NAACP, and another one of the few African-American members of the Confederate organization.
Well, God bless you. It sure is good to be around here in Tennessee with my Southern family. Yes, sir. There it is. Yes, sir. Oh, Lord have mercy. Boy, I love picking up the Christian cross of St. Andrew. Who was the first disciple of Jesus Christ? I can see him now in 69 A.D., what was used to be Pretoria, Greece, talking about his Lord and Master Jesus Christ. I can see that old prosecutor walk up to him and say, boy, we ain't going to have that round here. I can see the Christian cross of St. Andrew as their symbol. I am their flag. I was at Sumter when they began in jubilation. I was at Big Buffalo when the infantry fired its first volley. I smelled the gun smoke along Bull Run in Virginia and at Belmont along the Mississippi. For 7 days, I flapped in the turgid air at the James River bottom as McClellan ran from before Richmond. I was in the debacle at Fort Donelson. I led Jackson up the valley. Sidney Johnson would die for me, as would thousands of others whose graves are marked, signed no mine, without a name, unknown. I am their flag. I was a swell for the body of Stonewall after Chancellorsville. Men ate rats and knew me to keep me flying over Pittsburgh. I had tramped across the wheat field with Kemper and Armstead and Garnett at Gettysburg. I know the thrill of victory, the misery of defeat, the bloody cost of both. I am the flag. My God, I am the flag. When Longstreet broke the line at Chickamauga, I was in the lead. I was the last off Lookout Mountain. Men died to rescue me at Missionary Ridge. I was singed by the wildfire that burned to death the wounded in the wilderness. I was shot to tatters in the bloody angle at Spotsylvania. I was in it all, from Dalton to Peachtree Creek. And no worse place did I ever see than Kennesaw and New Hope Church. Amen. They planted me over the trenches at Petersburg, and there I stayed for many long months. I am the flag. I was rolled in blood at Frankton. I was stuffed with ice at Nashville. Many good men bade me farewell at Sailor's Creek. When the end came in Appomattox, when the last Johnny Reb left Durham Station, many carried fragments of my fabric hidden on their bodies. In the hard years of Reconstruction, so-called Reconstruction. That's right, amen. In the difficulty and despair of the years that slowly pass, the veterans, their wives, their sons, their daughters, they loved me. They kept alive the tales of valor, the legends of bravery. They passed them on to the grandchildren, and they to their children. And so, they were passed on to you. I am their flag. I have shrouded the bodies of heroes. I have been laved with the blood of martyrs. I am enshrined in the hearts of millions, living and dead. Salute me with affection and reverence. I'm not talking about men around here. When I walk up, you give me a little whipping suit. Salute. I'm talking about salute me with affection and reverence. Keep undying devotion in your hearts. I am history. I am heritage, not hate. Yes. I am the inspiration of valor from the past. Look away, Dixieland. I am their flag. God bless you. God bless Dixie. Thank you for having me here.
H.K. walked across Dixie, he carried several battle flags with him, and this is one of them. And we're glad to receive this from HK to the Forest Camp. And he's got it inscribed. Thank you very much.